Gary, you've been a longtime stalwart here on the Washington scene, and you've seen a lot of administrations come and a lot of administrations go. Elections matter, don't they? And as a pro-life activist, you have seen how much elections matter and, frankly, how much the 2016 elections mattered.
Elections are extremely important. You know, I always try to remind people that there's large portions of the world where there are millions of people who don't actually ever participate in a real election. In some cases, the countries they're in don't even try to have elections. In other cases, the elections are fake. So in a constitutional republic like the United States, built on the idea that liberty comes from God, anybody that is an American citizen really has a special privilege and right to be part of the process of governing themselves. I must admit, over the years, I've grown almost weary and certainly disappointed when I will sometimes go into churches and people still, not everybody, but a lot of people still think, oh, that's politics. I don't want to dirty my hands. It doesn't have anything to do with me anyway. So I think what people of faith need to realize is that if they don't occupy a spot for them in the public square, that spot will be occupied by somebody with much different values who will take America in a direction that I think most believers would find very uncomfortable in the years ahead.
Of course, Roe v. Wade now has been in effect for more than 45 years. There are those who look at it and take a pessimistic view and say it's been there for 45 years, it's not going anywhere, there's really nothing that we can do about it, maybe we can chip around the edges a little bit. What should be our goal now as pro-lifers? Is it realistic to still want to overturn Roe v. Wade? Is it possible that our votes can still make a substantial difference in preserving the sanctity of human life?
I think when it comes to the sanctity of human life, given that Roe versus Wade has been on the books for so many years by the Supreme Court, that we have to take a two-prong approach. On the one hand, we need to try to convict the hearts of the American people that even though right now this is legal, we need to convince them that it's immoral, that it's beneath us, that it's actually created a culture of death. I also know that over the years, like in the case of slavery and other times, our courts made mistakes. The American people followed those mistakes, and eventually the truth won out. And I'm still convinced, and I'm kind of getting up in years, but I'm still convinced that there's a decent chance, particularly if Christians will vote, that someday the alarm will go off and I'll get up and go down to the end of the driveway to pick up the newspaper, and the headline will be Roe versus Wade overturned, court finds right to life. And when that day comes, it will be because millions of people did what they should do as Christian citizens.
This isn't a partisan issue, this is a sanctity of human life issue, but we want to take a step back and look objectively. I think nobody would claim that our president is a perfect man. No president has been a perfect man. But how has the Trump administration been on issues of human life?
The Trump administration has been really just astonishing. During the campaign, he said the life issue was important. I know from insider information that in the presidential debates that took place between him and Hillary Clinton, unlike some other Republican presidential candidates in the past, he wanted the abortion issue to come up. He wanted to confront Hillary Clinton over the fact that she even supported abortion in the 6th, 7th, 8th month of pregnancy. And it did come up. And he, quite frankly, did a better job of making the pro-life case than a few more clearly Christian politicians have done over the years. And since then, the president has dealt with this issue over and over again. He's been putting judges on all levels of the federal courts who I think are the kind of judges that will look to the Constitution, and if they do, they will not find anywhere in it the word abortion or anything that any reasonable man or woman would interpret as being a right to destroy innocent human life. So he's been fantastic.
So from a pro-life perspective, there is reason to be encouraged and reason to stay the course.
From a pro-life standpoint, there's every reason in the world to be optimistic and to want to do everything you can. You don't have to be, you don't have to become a 7-day-a-week activist or get a job like I have dealing with public policy. just be a Christian citizen, a man or woman who's using the rights that many, many people have given everything to ensure that we have, and use those rights, and particularly that right to vote, and to select, to find and select those candidates in either party that you find them in, who are willing to state clearly that if elected, they will stand with us on the issue of innocent human life.